Alright. Well, ain't really been slacking this week, but haven't really been doing any projects worth video, and I got those cylinders apart for that plow and ended up ordering some rod stock for it and got seals for them. Still got to machine the rods, but pretty much got all the stuff to do that. Got a new tire for it. Got that mounted tonight. That was an ordeal. But anyway, the plow's coming along ever so slowly. But in the meantime, it's actually, if you can see, kind of dark outside. Well, it's getting dark outside. But I wanted to make this video, so I had something to put up in the morning, since he only got one this week. When I did the barn tour here, some guys showed some interest in seeing the cub, and hopefully it turns out. The lighting in here isn't great, but on the other hand, I also kind of like how the light kind of, I don't know. I like the way this barn lights up like this in the dark. It just kind of feels like old-timey and shit, if that makes any sense. But anyway, back to the cub. I actually had this thing shoot since I was 10, 11, somewhere in there. 'Cause the whole thing started, I got my 66, and then my little sister wanted a tractor. Well, my little sister wanted a Farmall Cub, so Dad bought her a 57, which is over in the barn with the fleet lines, which that one's probably, I don't think that's ever actually made it into a video, at least with a sneak peek. But that 57 showed up, and then for a while there, Dad was kind of on a Cub spree, and he bought this off of eBay. It was down in Tennessee. If I remember right, he gave like $750 or $800 for it. And really the only reason he even bought it was because it had brand new rubber on the back, and he wanted the tires to put on my sister's Cub, and then he was going to turn around and flip it. Because back at that time, Cubs were bringing like $1,500 to $2,000, which we'll get into that here a little bit. But so needless to say, it just happened to work out that one of my dad's friends was going down to Tennessee to see some relatives or vacation or something. Either way, one of my dad's buddies was going down there, so he took Dad's trailer, picked this up for him, and hauled it back here. And got it home and had to do a couple little things to get it right. It kind of ran, but had to give it basically had to give it a tune-up, replace the fuel line, just some general stuff for a tractor that is strange to you at the time. And basically, well, the only reason it ended up staying around was I fell in love with it, and it kind of became a go-kart for me. I ran the wheels off of this thing just because at the time it was so small. And I was still young enough that Dad didn't really want me driving my 66 without somebody around. Well, this thing was so stinking small, I could use this thing when nobody was around. So, used it and did quite a bit with it around the house for a while. Used it when we put the addition on the barn over at Mom and Dad to set grade and stuff. Did a lot of stuff around the yard with it. This and my sister's Cub both. Hers has a fast hitch. This has just got the hydraulic lift on it, which I'll walk around back here in a minute. But so yeah, the story on this one's actually kind of short and sweet. That's really all I can tell you about it, other than the fact that it hung around. Used it for a while, and then it kind of fell out of favor because we kind of ran out of stuff to do with it, and it sat for 5-6 years maybe. Maybe it wasn't quite that long. Either way, it sat for a while. And then I bought this place. And to tell you the God honest truth, I kind of forgot I even had it. And the first year I had this place, I was trying to figure out how I was going to move snow. Well, I ended up snagging, we had a snow blade for the Sears. So I plowed snow with that for the first year. Well, that kind of sucked because the hill in my driveway, that doesn't really like pushing on it. Well, then next year I was like, wait a minute, I've got a Cub. Why am I using a garden tractor? So last year I finally got this thing out of the barn, got it running again, put the blade on it, and used this to plow snow. Well, it and I had a real love-hate relationship last winter because the damn thing, once it started getting cold, didn't want to run. Well, I had to rebuild the mag in it, and I had to rebuild the carb in it again, which is understandable. It sat for a while. But in rebuilding the mag, I found out that somebody has been monkeying around with that motor that had no business monkeying around with it, because I can't get the timing set. It's like they got the mag drive gear a tooth off or something, and I can't physically get the mag in the right spot to get the pointer lined up on the crank pulley when the engine fires on number 1. So I had to do some fiddling around and got it where it's close. But eventually the motor's going to have to come apart, and I'm going to have to fix that, which the motor needs to come apart anyway because she's tired. I mean, she does all right, but well, it's a 48, and I doubt that motor's ever been apart. And she burns a little oil. Mostly leaks it. The rear main is gone. I don't think the rear main is existing anymore. This last spring, while it kept raining and I didn't have anything to do, I finally rebuilt the hydraulic unit in it because it finally got to the point where it was leaking oil almost faster than you could pour it in. So I fixed the hydraulic unit in it's rebuilt now. And yeah, it's a Farmall Cub. There's really not a whole lot to say about them, honestly. And this is the early ones. Actually, 47 was the first year for them. And 47 didn't offer hydraulic lift, but they only have built them in 47 for like 2 or 3 months. So if you find a 47, it's actually kind of a rare trick. I'm not going to call it rare, but it's a little harder to find because they didn't build them very long, and they didn't build that many of them in 47. And then in 48, they really took off. But I believe in 48 was when they started offering the hydraulic lift, which this used the drawbar for a pivot point, and you would flip the drawbar around or leave it like this, however the implement configuration required, bolt the implement to the drawbar, and then there's a set of hooks that go on here with chains, and your implement would pick up and down with chains, except for the disc. The disc actually had a rigid linkage that bolted to this, and the disc was rigid, but it still bolted to the drawbar. And so they built them from 47 to like, I want to say they built them from 47 to 77. I was going to look that up before I started making this video, but I'm pretty sure they quit building them as a Farmall Cub. Actually, they went from a Farmall Cub to an International Cub. They quit building them as an International Cub, I'm pretty sure, in 77. And by that time, they were a yellow body with a white hood and white fenders. And actually quite a bit had changed. They had a fast hitch, they had a cushion ride seat, they had a different paint job, they had them up to 15 horse. Because the early one, like, I think up until they went to square hoods, they were only like 9.25 horse. They're rated as a 1-plow tractor, they pull 112. And I got a plow for this too. Actually, the only thing I've got for this one is, well, the blade is actually for my sister's Cub, and then I got a plow, or I got the plow for it, and the plow is actually in really good shape, like immaculate shape. I need to get that over here and get it out of the other barn and get it off the dirt. But anyway, this is going to sound really, really weird coming from me because of the color I run. But a Farmall Cub, if you want to get into tractors, I don't care if you want to collect John Deere, Alice Chalmers, IH, Oliver, Ford. I don't give a shit what you want to collect. If you have never done this before and you made the decision that you want to kind of tinker around with tractors and you want something to learn on, this is hands down the best first tractor for anybody to own, period. And I say that for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, you can pick these things up now for anywhere between about $700 to $1,000 all day long in running condition. Now, back when we got this one, like I say, they were $1,500 to $2,000 because everybody was buying them to put belly mowers on them. But now that generation of guys that were looking to have these things to do that with are getting to the point where they're having issues getting up and or getting on and off of them, because they are kind of a pain in the ass to get on and off of, especially if you're older. Because you're tight to the steering wheel, and 'cause I think I got the seat. And nope, you can't move the seat on these. I thought you could. You can move the seat on the newer ones that have the newer style seat, but the post is fixed. The operator stations on them kind of tight, and they're not really powerhouses, and they don't have live PTO. And basically, for all those reasons, they've kind of fallen out of favor as mowing tractors, which was what their big thing was like 10, 15 years ago. So now the price is basically tanked on them. So you could pick these things up dirt cheap running. They're so damn tiny. I think, if I remember right, without any implements on it, one set of weights, just sitting a tractor, I remember I was only like 12 or 1,500 pounds. They don't weigh squat. And you take the weights off, it drops. So you can pull these things on one of them single axle trailers that you buy at TSC for $1,000. I mean, they're easy to move. You don't need a big truck. You can pull them with a 1/4-ton pickup. I've seen guys pull them to shows with minivans. They don't need, they're easy to move. They're tiny. Like, if you're one of the guys that likes tinkering with stuff and you live in a subdivision and you don't have any room other than your 2-car garage, I mean, look at the footprint of this. Look at the footprint of that lawnmower. It's not that much bigger than a decent-sized garden tractor. So they don't take up any space. They don't weigh shit, so they're easy to move. You can pick them up cheap. And then they are an excellent opportunity to learn anything mechanical that you want, because they're easy to work on. All the parts are really small. I mean, you could physically manhandle everything on this tractor with one guy, except for it'd probably take 2 guys to pick the motor up. Everything else, one guy could pick up and move on this thing if you take it apart. I mean, they're so perfect for a learning opportunity tractor. I mean, the motors on them are dirt cheap to go through. They're just a little, they're an International C60, which is 60 cubic inches, just a little flathead. So you don't got to worry about head work on them. They turn so slow and they make so little horsepower that generally you don't even have to bore them. Most guys just buy a new set of pistons and a new set of rings and bearings and drop new pistons, rings, and bearings in them and call them good. And that generally takes care of any issues they have. But if you really want to, they make a 40 over piston kit for this thing, so you can make her a real powerhouse. You could probably get like 16 horse out of it. And if you wanted to fiddle around and get a little bit more out of them, you can get a governor out of a combine power unit, because they may put these on the, I can't remember what International's little combine is that they use these for the power unit on. But I mean, there's some little things you could do to get a little bit more oomph out of the motor if you really wanted to. I mean, the hydraulic, it's got a very rudimentary hydraulic system on it, just a little gear pump. All the hydraulic system is contained in this cylinder and valve body. There's nothing to it. And you can buy a radiator brand new. You can buy a head casting brand new. You can buy all the sheet metal brand. I mean, there were so many of these things built, and there were so many guys collecting and restoring them. And there's just still so many out there, and there's still so many guys working on them, that if you have every major casting for one of these things, you could buy enough aftermarket parts to build yourself a tractor if you really wanted to. I mean, they are just, Steiner has parts, Steiner and Allstate's pretty much sell the same shit. And this will probably be one of the few times that you hear me advertising Steiner, because I really don't care for their parts that much. That's, for the Oliver stuff, I'll go anywhere but Steiner. A lot of guys are going to disagree with that. I just don't like the quality of their parts, and they kind of are pricey, and there's better places to buy parts for. If you got an IH or a Ford or an Alice, those are really the big three that I would say you're going to do decent at Steiner on. But Deere, Oliver, Deere, Oliver, some of the other ones that have a little bit more of a following to them. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Well, Deere's obviously got a big following, but Oliver has a really dedicated following, and there's a lot of aftermarket companies that dedicated specifically to Oliver, that there's better places to buy Oliver parts, and there's better places to buy Deere parts, and truth be known, there's better places to buy IH parts, but Steiner just has so much shit. So they're really, really nice to learn on. You don't even need that many tools. If you had 2 sets of wrenches from like 5/16 up to probably 15, not even that. If you had 2 sets of wrenches from like 5/16 up to 7/8, 1 set of wrenches from about 15/16 up to 1 1/8, a hammer, a set of punches, a 3/4 inch ratchet set, and a 1/2 inch ratchet set, you could do anything you want on this tractor. You don't need, you could, if you really wanted to, walk into Harbor Freight with probably $200 and walk out with all the tools you need to work on this. And that's also the only time you'll probably hear me advertising Harbor Freight, because I don't like Harbor Freight tools either. I like good tools. Not saying Harbor Freight, they do sell some decent tools. You just got to be real picky, and I'm a Craftsman and Snap-on guy. That's what I like. But the other thing that's nice about, and I should probably get a different view of this because I've been standing in one spot for a while. We'll walk around over here. The other nice thing, and actually I probably ought to be over here for what I'm about to talk about anyway. If you got any kids that you want to get involved in tractors, these things are perfect for little kids. Because the operator station is so small and the way it's arranged, you could stick a 4-year-old on this thing and they can reach the gear shift, they can reach the throttle, they can reach the hydraulic control. About the only thing that a little kid would have an issue reaching is the starter and the choke from the seat. And if they are too short to reach the pedals, the way these things are made, and actually it was a case when my dad brought my sister's 57 home, she couldn't quite reach the clutch. So all he did was take a piece of 1.5 by 3 box tube and made a pedal extension about yay tall so she could reach the clutch. And they're perfect for little kids to learn to drive on, and they're safe too. Obviously, if you're going to have one of these, you're going to have one of your kids running it around the yard or whatever, don't let them out of your sight. But if something happens and they do get in trouble, it's real easy to run up to it over here on this side and either yank it out of gear, or B, just reach down and smack the kill switch and you're out of trouble. And and the nice thing about these is if you put it into first gear idling on this thing, you could put it in gear, get it moving, go in and eat lunch, and it still wouldn't make it to my house by the time you got done eating. These things just creep in first gear. So like I say, they're a great learning tractor. They are a great tractor to teach your kids on. If you just wanted a project to work on with your kids, buy a Farmall Cub, and they're fun. They're about useless as tits on a board because they got no power, they got no live PTO, but they're just fun to drive. They're literally like a little go-kart. You put it up in third gear, it does 9 miles an hour. It doesn't sound like much if you get it out on the road, but tooling around the yard, 9 miles an hour pretty quick. Or if you want something to take to tractor shows, there's a lot of guys that'll take these things and get a bench seat out of a bus and make a platform on the back. You can cruise around at tractor shows and you can get in for free because it's a tractor, so you're not getting charged a side-by-side ticket, which most places do. A Farmall Cub is just a great little fun tractor to have around. And I know that sounds weird coming from me because I'm diehard Oliver, But that being said, almost every guy has one tractor in the back of their barn that's a different color that they don't talk about, but is there for a reason because they love it. And I love this little tractor. I really need to give it some more attention. One of these, I was planning to rebuild the motor this last summer, and then the 1950T got out of hand, and that didn't happen because I want to put the 40 over kit in it. There's a few other odds and ends I need to do. And then eventually I want to go through and paint it because it's been painted once before. Obviously, it's been over the decals and stuff, but like I say, I don't care what color you think you want to get into collecting. If you haven't ever worked on a tractor before in your life and you need something to start learning on, these things are perfect because they're so cheap and there's so many parts available for them. And the other thing it's going to do is teach you to order parts by serial number break, because they built these things for so long that there were changes in them. And there are certain parts where you got to know your serial number, because just because it fit this cub doesn't mean it's going to fit this cub. And then if you got even less space, you can get a Cub Lowboy, which sits like this high off the ground and has a little bit shorter wheelbase because they took the final drives and turned them to lower them. I mean, I can't stress this enough. If you want to get into tractor collecting, or you just want a little fun toy to have around, or you want something to teach your kids mechanics on, or you want a tractor but you live in a suburb or something and you ain't got a lot of room, Farmall Cub. And they're so dang light that if you just want to have it around for yard work and stuff, put a set of 5 ribs on the front and a set of turf tires, they don't leave a mark in your yard because they're so light, especially if you leave the weights off. So yeah, that's a little cubby. I guess since we're here, I can see if it'll start. It ought to. I got the maintainer on it. I just leave it over the winter because she cranks a little slow. It does charge though. She shall go. That's the other nice thing, is they're just so damn quiet. And if you, up until, I can't remember the year, the early ones had the exhaust to come through the hood, and then they changed it and they made the exhaust go down underneath the back of the tractor. Those are even quieter. I mean, they're almost silent. So yeah, I guess that's enough of me yakking about it, because you probably think I'm getting preachy by now, but like I say, Farmall Cub, perfect way to get into tractor collecting, no matter what color you want to have. So anyway, just wanted to get this recorded so I had something to put up in the morning, and probably gonna make another one Sunday. So I guess that's enough of me yik-yakking, so we'll catch y'all on the next one.